The matchup in the Eastern Conference first round of the postseason that I find to be the most compelling is the 2-7 between the Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets. And there's a ton of storylines interwoven into this particular matchup that can draw attention. You have Kyrie versus Boston. You have Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum squaring off in a 7-game series. But what pricks my interest the most is what is Brooklyn going to do with Ben Simmons? We've gotten a load of reports over the past weeks about the status of the Brooklyn Nets superstar. Not a point guard, I guess point forward. That doesn't show up on the box sheet. But we've gotten a lot of rumors as to what is going to be next for Ben Simmons. We know that he's walking around the facility with the confidence of Jordan. I don't really know what that means. I would like that to be put into layman's terms because that feels like it's one or the other. We'll get to that in a second. But we got a report yesterday on Thursday that said Ben Simmons is eyeing his return at either game 4, 5, or 6. And that interests me greatly because on the surface, I think it's a terrible idea to debut a superstar like Ben Simmons, somebody particularly with his skill set. I mean, his job is making people's lives easier on the floor. It's putting them in a position to where they can get open looks, to where the defense is uncomfortable, which is going to open up for other guys, potentially Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, but even more so your guys like Seth Curry and Bruce Brown and the guys that need a little extra help getting open looks. That's what Ben Simmons' job is for, but there's a chemistry that comes with that, right? Like there needs to be a chemistry that comes with making that work. So on the surface, this seems like a ludicrous idea to debut Ben Simmons, not just in the postseason, but potentially in an elimination game. Game 5, it's reasonable to see that Brooklyn could potentially be down 3-1. Unlikely, but it's possible they're down 3-1. Game 6, they could be down 3-2. What exactly are you waiting for? If you're ready to go, I feel like you should be ready to go, but this is not that. I'm not going to gatekeep Ben Simmons and his health and tell him when I feel like he should be able to go, but I'm intrigued by this because everything is pointing in the direction that this should fail. That for Brooklyn, debuting Ben Simmons in the middle of a postseason series should have them falling flat on their face. But yet I sit here and I don't think it will. I sit here and I'm excited to see what Ben Simmons is going to do for Brooklyn. I sit here thinking that this is actually going to work. There is something about Brooklyn. I don't quite know what it is. I mean, I'm a man of faith. I don't really do like voodoo stuff. That's not really where I put my attention. But maybe it is some Brooklyn-esque voodoo. I know that's more a New Orleans thing, but who knows? Maybe it's Brooklyn-esque voodoo. Maybe it's some like Kyrie Irving hocus pocus magician kind of stuff. Maybe the sage in Brooklyn is just hitting a little differently, although I should say Kyrie's not getting his sage from Brooklyn. He's probably getting it from somewhere much different where it might actually be hitting a little differently. I don't know what it is, but what I do know is that Brooklyn has based its identity on being unorthodox. And up to this point in the season, it's worked. Kyrie is playing, and he's playing in every single game, home and away. He rode out that wave, and he crashed in and cashed in, and it worked in his favor. I mean, if you look at just the way that the Nets in particular are set up compared to that of the New York Knicks, like the Knicks are big. They are loud. The colors pop. It is vibrant. They want you to know. They want you to love the Knicks. The NBA, I mean, how often have we heard it? The NBA cannot survive without the Knicks. And for everything that that franchise represents, it feels like Brooklyn is the complete opposite. They are unorthodox. They're going to do things differently than the bigger, badder New York Knicks organization is going to do. Even from a color perspective, it's darker tones. It gives me a bit more of like outlaw vibes. Like the Brooklyn Nets, the way that organization has been set up, the way that they've leaned into this, they are the outlaws of the NBA. And this isn't just because Durant and Kyrie Irving are there. That was the same feel that I got years ago when D'Angelo Russell put the Nets in a position where we actually cared about them. I mean, remember that a couple of years ago, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving said that's the reason they came to Brooklyn, and then D'Angelo Russell was traded and the coach got fired. That aside, but if you remember that season a couple of years ago, the Brooklyn Nets had absolutely zero reason, zero business to be as good as they were that season. They just overachieved, and what made them fun is they overachieved with like an outlaw kind of mentality. Now you can replace D'Angelo Russell with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and that feeling of outlaw maybe decreases a little bit because these guys are exactly where they're supposed to be, but it's the methodology and the ideology in which the organization operates that still is a bit more outlandish and still a bit more of an outlaw, to the point where I look at Ben Simmons and when he eventually does come back and think to myself, this could actually work. He could actually put Brooklyn in a position where they can stun the 2-seed Celtics. He could put Brooklyn in a position to do what we thought they were going to do at the beginning of the season, which is win a championship. It all comes down to Simmons himself. The organization has done everything that they've needed to do to make him comfortable and to put him in a position where he can have success. It now comes down to Ben Simmons, and this is where the confidence comes into play. He's been walking around with the confidence of Jordan, which is crazy because it's a complete 180 from the last time we saw Ben Simmons playing on a basketball floor. But having the confidence of Jordan can, in theory, be a great thing. It could also be a terrible thing, because there's only two outcomes. You're either right or you're not. There's no middle ground there. You know, we can't say, oh, he has the confidence of Jordan, watch him play a couple of games and be like, you know what? He was looking like more Tony Kukoc. You know, maybe a little Scottie Pippen confidence there, a little Dennis Rodman. It's none of that. You either have the confidence of Michael Jordan and you go out there and ball out and play significantly better than you did in that series against Atlanta nearly a calendar year ago. You prove that right, or you get humbled. Those are the only two options here for Ben Simmons. So now the ball is in his court. It's felt like it's been in his court for, well, a calendar year at this point, but the ball is now in Ben Simmons' court. If the Brooklyn Nets are going to put the faith in Ben Simmons, and they've defended him, they've talked him up, they've sang his praises, if they're going to put now the confidence in him, it's up to him to go out on the floor and prove them right. And if he does prove them right, Brooklyn is going to win. It's not like they're going down in 7. It's none of that. If Ben Simmons is, if he proves the confidence that Brooklyn has had in him to be correct, the Nets are going to beat the Celtics. It's as simple as that. He is the biggest X factor in that series because they have no film on him for how he's going to play with the Brooklyn Nets, which is going to make it very uncomfortable for Boston. As good as they are defensively, it's going to make it very uncomfortable for Boston. This new factor that Ben Simmons adds to Brooklyn is going to play very, very well in the favor of the Nets. It just has to happen. But if Ben Simmons checks into that game, whether it's Game 4, Game 5, or Game 6, and this is the former All-Star, former best defensive player, playmaking skills compared to LeBron James, if we see that version of Ben Simmons, that is a wrap, and Boston is going down in round number 1.